attracted gobs and gobs of people who basically just show up to DEF CON to compete in his challenges. And I met several of them that literally do nothing but come and compete in the stuff that he's created, which if you've ever actually attempted and looked at is genius. Like, it's pure genius, it's wonderful stuff. So, and then coupling that with the fact that he also used to be an adjunct professor at my UAT, or UACT when I was there. Made logical sense to kind of pull him out and ask him to come down. So I want to give you guys a chance to give him a round of applause for coming all the way out here to help us out and do this.
I hope I can live up to that, the expectation. How's everybody doing? So I'm used to speaking to a room of about 15,000 people that make a lot of noise. So how's everybody doing?
Good!
All right, so let's get underway. I'm going to kind of play this one by ear. We have a small enough group that I can get feedback from you, and we can kind of shift and steer and talk about the things you guys want to talk about. So I can sit up here and talk for hours. I like to get on a soapbox. I'm very opinionated about a lot of things. I like it when you challenge me, and I like it when we have edifying discussions. So let's get going here. So I have to give a little disclaimer here. Any Doctor Who fans in the audience? So you'll recognize the David Tennant suit here, correct? That's actually a correct, well, the picture is not the greatest. That suit is actually made from the exact same material that they used to make David Tennant's suit. This lovely young lady actually is my fiance. And what I'm missing to be here, who knows what that is? Anybody? What is it?
Elder Scrolls Online.
So Ellen, who you just saw, who's my fiance, is one of the major game producers for Elder Scrolls Online. Their launch date is today. And it took a lot for me to come here and not be there for their official launch. So,
All right.
So you'll note their launch date, 4/14, little interesting Easter egg. The reason they chose that particular date was so that when they launched in both the UK and the US, when you flip the month and day, it's still the same date. So as somebody who does puzzles and number stuff like that, I thought that was really clever. Consequently, the elf on the left is actually modeled after her. So if you play Elder Scrolls Online. I have to also give out props because like you'll notice, like when you watch shows with physicists and other scientists and things like that, people are always talking about standing on the shoulders of giants and how they got to where they're going to be. I have to give props to the 949 guys. I have to give props to the 303, 602 who's in the house tonight, who's here. All right, APG, which I will get to in a minute, and several others. I have some disclaimers for this presentation. Some things I don't like to do. You'll notice sometimes I'll deviate from the slides. I don't like people who sit up here and just go, and this is what I wrote on this bullet, and this is what I wrote on this bullet. I think that's lame. So I also don't put up with lazy questions. I like good questions, but I don't like intellectually lazy people. I think the hacker community needs to continue to grow and push ourselves. So. The other thing I won't do is I won't advocate illegal activity. So, Walter Shea, who am I? My name's Ryan Lost. I'm actually an Arizona native, which is why I came to this con. Everybody natives here? So I made a commitment to ye old conference organizers here that from this point forward, I'm going to do everything I can to build this conference. The reason for that is when I was growing up here, there wasn't a big scene. And we would have we'd have little 2,600 meetings. There weren't a whole lot of people that would show up. I want to have a really big community here. We have a lot of tech industry here. We've got Intel, we've got other groups that are here. We got a lot of talent and a lot of people here. But we seem to not get together and organize like I've seen in other major cities and places I've been, especially as a hacker. It's hard to find like-minded people. I like to go into a room and not have to explain my t-shirt to somebody. This young man here, Skyler, came up to me and was making several jokes about my t-shirt because he understands it. He's a little kid and he's here and he understands this. I go out on the street, people look at my shirts and they're like, what the hell does that mean? I don't get that. So I like to be with like-minded people. And I created an email address for you guys just to get a hold of me, so feel free. So, who the hell are you? How many of you, this is your first CactusCon here? So, more than half. So, think about it maybe to yourselves or shout something out. Why are you here? Why'd you come to HackerCon? Find a job? Hang out with other people? So you guys are like dead fish right now.
See my brother's feet.
No, seriously, think about it. Think about it. Why did you come to this con? And
Learn something new.
Exactly. To learn something new, to meet other people, right? Network with the folks that are here. Don't be in these little pockets of people. Reach out to the folks that are around you, get to know them. And like I said earlier, what do you want to talk about? Please help me direct where we go with this conversation, because I got hours and hours and hours of things I can talk about. And I'm very opinionated. So, I have to get a pet peeve out of the way. Some of you, well, probably none of you have actually seen this because it was a security issue. How many of you are familiar with the term thinking outside the box? Okay, so we're hackers, we're supposed to be creative people, we're security professionals. This is one of my giant pet peeves, and I get really upset about it. So the phrase thinking outside the box traditionally came from what is known as the 9-dot problem. How many of you are familiar with this puzzle? See, I'm in HackerCon, like over half of you have even heard of this already. So the shtick is that some motivational speaker comes up who's going to teach you to be creative. And comes up and says, you have to connect all those dots, but you can only use 4 straight lines. And you can't lift the pen from the paper. Now go do it. And then people are like fiddling around with it. Try it. Think about your solution if you've never seen this. See, and I don't mean to insult you guys, because you guys are above the average of the bell curve of the normal person. So that's the first solution. And what does the motivational speaker usually say at this point? Aha! You imposed a heuristic upon yourself that you could not draw lines outside that box. And I will come down like Moses from on high and bring knowledge to you and say, you imposed this heuristic, and if you simply were told that you could draw outside the box, you would have been able to solve this. There's a second solution using 3 lines. Again, the motivational speaker insults you, in my opinion, by saying, you didn't solve this problem. And of course, this maps to other problems, especially in our product space, in our jobs and the things that we do. So the asshat explanation. I didn't say you couldn't draw outside the box, you just assumed you couldn't. It's easy once you cast off your assumptions. It's very simple if I just tell you that you can draw outside the box. That's bull. There's actually been studies on it. There is an unexamined assumption. The unexamined assumption is if you were told that you could draw outside the box, that it is therefore easy for you to come up with a solution. Think about this in the security space. If you're a pen tester, you weren't told you can't do such and such, therefore if you break that heuristic, you should magically be able to break into said system. So there was an interesting study done where they took a group of people, average folks on the street, not the higher IQ folks like we got here in this room. You can give yourselves a key. And they actually told these people, they said, you can draw outside the box. And they found they only increased the number of people that were solving the problem by about 20%. Think about that for a second. And the ones that did get it, it took them still several times of trial and effort. So they decided, well, we'll give them creativity training. I'm getting to a point here with how this applies to you guys here. And I'll let you read the quote. But basically what they did is they took people and they gave them scaled down versions of the problem of how to draw outside the box. And they found it still didn't help a number of people solve this problem. And the conclusion that was drawn from this is that it is not some lame, mentally imposed heuristic upon yourself that prevents you from having these aha, epiphanal, creative moments. Especially the kind of stuff you're going to need as a pen tester or a reverse engineer or any of the guys that are working here in the security field. They found that what it is expertise. It's depth of knowledge in a field. It's the time spent invested in a particular problem space. So the next time you hear somebody say, you're a hacker, that means you're creative. I get accused of being creative all the time. I don't think I'm creative. I come up with crazy stuff for the guys at DEF CON every single year. Just off the wall crazy stuff because I'm weird. But it's not because I think I'm creative, it's because I read stuff all the time. I'm constantly online. I'm constantly playing in the address space, if you will, of what we all deal with on a daily basis. So, that's, I'm getting off my soapbox. Next time you hear somebody say, you need to think outside the box, just smack them in the face and tell them I totally get it. So, gonna keep going. You got the way?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, Intel buys McAfee. How many of you are aware of that? Yeah, you should be if you work in this field. Strange things are afoot at the Circle K. Let's think about this for a minute. What does Intel do?
Computers.
In general, if you had to summarize it really simply, make chips, right? Make chips. Is everyone okay with that? Any Intel guys here? Yeah. That. So, why? You have to stop and think. Why would Intel buy McAfee? And let's extend this little thought experiment. Those of you in this address space, what just happened with Prolexic recently? Who knows? Someone say it. Akamai acquired Prolexic. What happened with FireEye and Mandiant? What's going on? There are a lot of companies right now that are absorbing companies and basically forming Voltron. There is something very weird happening in our address space. Think about this. Start watching the news. Now, do you think the timing is ironic if you couple that with the fact that we have had recent, shall we say, in plumbers' terms, leaking things happening towards the East Coast? Do you think that there are not changes coming in our field? All of us, how many of you are students in here right now? How many of you hope to get a job when you get out of school working in computer science or the security field? This stuff directly affects your future. How many of you are in the security field right now? Should be a lot of you. This stuff directly affects you if you don't watch this type of trending. So I would like to take you through a little thought process of why maybe Intel purchased McAfee. So we're going to talk about DAT files. Who knows what a DAT file is in reference to malware? Raise your hands, everybody. You should all know. If you don't know, I'll tell you. So when they asked me to speak here, they didn't tell me what they wanted me to speak on. I assumed they wanted to hear some stuff about the DEF CON stuff and everything else. I want to kind of go a little bit all over the map. But let's talk about a DAT file for a second. Let's talk about why McAfee would be purchased. And these are a couple of things that I'm going to go through relatively quickly. So, those of you working in malware, and the point I was making is I looked on the list of speakers and there was a bunch of people doing stuff on malware analysis and research. This is directly applicable to that. So, big data ahead. For those of you who are unaware, do we have any former McAfee employees in here by chance? Nobody? For those of you in the security field, you know that one of the things you live or die by is how much data you have, especially if you're trying to do trending or heuristics or anything else like that. How many of you are aware of the fact that McAfee's backend gets about 64 billion queries a day? Did you realize it was that large? Did you know that it's the largest in the industry? Now does it make sense why Intel might be a little bit interested in acquiring said company? Think about this, and this is a breakdown of what the general categorization of those queries are against McAfee's backend. And they are saving and storing all of this data. Now mirror that with that discussion of leaky plumbing that we talked about earlier that may be happening on the federal side. So if I have this huge amount of data that's coming in as an analyst or a researcher, I can't look at 64 billion plus queries by hand. Those of you who work in this type of data space know a lot of your job is dealing with large data and how do I filter that down and find interesting stuff? How do I work with that? So in this case, automation. I have to. It's not feasible. I don't have the army of people to go and hand look at every sample. Plus you wouldn't want to. You've got false positives, you've got false negatives. So let's talk about the circle of life for a DAT file. And then I'll tell you why this is very uninteresting to me as a researcher. It should be uninteresting to you unless your job or goal in life is to go become somebody who creates DAT files, which are the files that are loaded into your antivirus or other, be it any of the open stuff from like Mandiant that's dealing with IPSs and things like that. So here's the life cycle. I'm sorry if you can't see it very well. But basically, wow, you really can't read that text, can you? So you have this chunk over here. You've got customers, competitors, and honeypots. And I'm oversimplifying right now. For those of you who are unaware, in this space professionally, a lot of these companies share a lot of this data. A lot of this data is sold or given based on contractual agreements by different companies, because obviously McAfee is not the only one that does this. Honeypots, akin to sensors out in the wild. Is everybody comfortable with the terms? Can I go on with that? Okay. So we collect all this crap. It's a lot of information. And we got the little dudes sitting at their desk because we just discussed that's really feasible, right? So you'll notice I say researchers and automation. And I'll get to how that division happens. And out of that, they're going to analyze it. If it's interesting in the sense that it's malicious, when I say interesting, by the way, I mean it's like bad shit. Like it's really going to mess up your system. Nasty, nasty malware. Detection is added. Usually you're talking about signature-based stuff, but now that we're getting modern, we're doing heuristic-based stuff, right? Because we all know that signature-based detection is defeated before it starts. And then you add a repair to your system. It gets put into the malware signatures, and by signatures I also mean heuristics. It gets put out and it gets tested, because what happens if you push out something to millions of customers and it happens to block something that's new and good? What
You
happens?
shut down people's computers.
Yeah, you do bad stuff to your customers. You don't want to do that. Is that so? There's a Korean proverb, "Byung jugo yak junda," which means to give somebody a disease and then sell them the remedy for it. So that's exactly what that is. So QA test bed, because you got to test this crap. This I kind of grouped together. Basically, your data is released and it's put into the cloud. In terms of cloud, where your software is going to reach out to when you're querying against this type of stuff, and then it's released to customers, and the whole circle of life continues. Okay. That is how McAfee proper has made their money, their bread and butter, for a long, long time. They make a lot of money at it. They have a lot of customers and a whole shitload of data, more than anyone else. So, I would argue, as a security researcher and somebody interested in very particular types of attacks, you don't get insight from that process. That process is kind of like, I think of the Pink Floyd, the guys marching into the meat grinder, and the stuff spitting out the other end, and it's this giant machine. And you've got really intelligent groups out there that can defeat this process in a number of ways. How many of you are familiar with repacking something to get past signature detection? How many of you are familiar with changing very, very little in something to change signature detection? Yes. So I'm more interested in the hard problems. Who is this guy? Who is this? You guys really don't know who this is?
Rick Rhodes.
Someone say it.
Delliker?
Who is it?
It's like Descartes or something like that. Captain Morgan.
I'm going to leave that one as an exercise for the reader. I'm really shocked that more of you don't know that. I'm not trying to be condescending, but know your meaning. This is why, like I said, breadth of knowledge. I'm not smarter than you guys. I just read a lot of stupid crap, so that's why. So let's make a point for all this. Why am I even talking about this? We're here at CactusCon. We talked about some reverse engineering. Why is Wasp from DEF CON up here telling me about McAfee's giant backend and all their data and them being bought by Intel? Why does Intel even care they make chips? And this is all confusing. Please get on with the point. Some things I'm interested in. I am interested in figuring out when someone does an attack, who it is. I'm interested in where they come from, why they do it. And I'm interested in the guys that are like the professionals, nation state. I picture the guy in the secret room in Russia or in China or somewhere that's targeting a very specific person. That's a really hard problem because your signal to noise with the internet proper is very high. So what we do, my group, makes some assumptions and then works for it. So I have access to McAfee's data. And what McAfee does, which I showed you in that cycle before, is McAfee ingests all this data every day and then they classify it. Have we seen this before? If they have, it gets tagged with how malicious it's considered to be and who it's considered, well, what it's, basically it's a, this is bad, this isn't bad. It's really binary. I actually, on a daily basis, on some systems that I have control of, pull down all of the unknown samples from McAfee's hits every single day. It's a huge amount of data. But it's stuff that pretty much all of your modern malware vendors have not seen or haven't categorized, which still is an incredible large amount of data, and this is what we do with it. Part of this process, I am not allowed to tell you because my employer said I can't yet. I hope to soon, because I hope to share it and make it open source. When that will happen, I can't answer yet. There are still some shifting in power and other things going on. Everybody is familiar with when companies get acquired and move around and stuff like that. So technically, I am an Intel employee right now, in addition to working for some other folks. And by the way, you all know it's no longer McAfee, it's now Intel Security. Right? Yeah, we like to get the crazy man off of our... And by the way, he pronounces it McAfee himself, and he is nuts.
And he's relieved.
And he's relieved. So what happens with all this? So, and I really apologize that you can't... How many of you know what Yara is? Raise your hand. A few of you. Those of you guys who are starting to get into malware analysis, I know the talk earlier was to help you guys with malware analysis. If you don't know what Yara is, go read about it and learn. Learn what IOC is too, and the open IOC stuff, like the stuff Manuel's putting out. There's actually 3 IOC standards. Go out and learn that. So Yara is basically a set of scripting tools to help you search heuristically through files and data to look for whatever markers you're indicating, malicious activity, strings, whatever. It's a little more powerful than just searching for strings. Go look it up. It's open source. It's documented all over the place. Now the power behind Yara is, first of all, there are numbers of open source groups that are Yara groups that are sharing information. There are also closed groups that deal with very specific areas of the world or deal with very specific problems just because they're interested in it. And if you're interested in malware research, you really should be part of some of these groups because they share these Yara rules with each other. And what you get when you get someone's Yara rule is you get the research that they've done on particular pieces of malware that's been rolled up into a Yara rule. Now this is not signature based. This is, for lack of a better term, it's like genetically looking for the markers or something. So you're not looking for a specific signature, you're looking for indicators of. It's the best way I can describe it without you going out and actually looking at it. Because of that, I have some closed groups I'm a member of, and I have some public groups, and then I have my own research. We take these Yara rules, and we filter those set of unknowns that I told you I'm pulling down from McAfee. And I see what falls out from that. And it's very interesting that when you have this giant data set, you can find out of, in this one here, you know, it's 516,000 total MP5s that were hit that day. Some of these that say 0%, that's because they had one hit. Now those of you who work in pen testing and everything else, think about this. What do you think is indicative of something that with all of the tracking that you have, you say a single hit? It's usually a targeted attack, right? Well, think about it. It's either a false positive or it's a targeted attack of some kind. Or it's somebody who's pretty skillful because it's a variant of something that hasn't been seen by everyone else before. So the stuff that's falling out of the research that I'm doing are new ODAs, new attacks, and targeted attacks. And this is an example of the dashboard that my team has built for doing this type of research. And that's the dashboard I'm hoping to get people access to. So attribution via markers is possible. For those of you also working in this space, you know attribution is next to impossible for the most part. However, we're starting to find there are ways of looking at malware, and I can say that a particular group has done particular types of attacks. Are any of you familiar with ICSHE or IceFog or Comet Crew? Do these names mean anything to you guys? Who knows what Comet Crew is? Raise your hand. What country is associated with Comet Crew? China. So I'm finding ways of picking out these attacks. Now, this is all file-based analysis. This isn't even network traffic-based yet. So I'll get like 6K hits out of 10 million with the filters that I've got in place. It's still a lot. So I needed something more. I needed something more to make this manageable. So we started looking at certs, malware that is signed. How many of you know what I mean by that when I say something is signed? Code is signed. Okay, for those of you who didn't raise your hands because it was more than half. So when you sign a piece of code, it means that you are cryptographically putting your thumbprint, for lack of a better analogy, onto something saying that this is a legitimate piece of code that I created. You get these things called certificates from issuing certificate authorities. Now, the authorities are the top tier, and then they have sub-issuers beneath them. So what I started doing with my team is we started looking at all the malware we were collecting, running the YARA rules against them, seeing what filtered out of it, and then looking at what was signed and what certs were being used to do it. I don't know of many people. There's been, I think, 2 white papers about people that are doing cert-based attribution. And so what we found, like for example, here's a thought cert. The llmail.ru might be a little bit of a hint that 99% of the usage of that cert has been known to be dirty. So if you get something in and you're getting a query on the back end that says, you know, this doesn't look like a virus to me, but it was signed by this cert. Guess what? It's probably dirty. So from now on, if Mr. llmail.ru makes a variant to defeat signature-based detection, I still can be suspicious of his stuff based on what cert signed it. Yeah?
Why is LLRU signing it in the first place?
Because a lot of code that, well, first of all, Android people, any Android developers in the audience, what do you have to do to anything you submit to the Android marketplace?
Sign it.
It has to be signed. So signing something is indicative of saying you get past a lot of some things that you wouldn't otherwise because it's signed code. So what you're looking at here in these graphics is the darker red the circle is, the more dirty it's considered to be, i.e. the more instances of bad usage, and the size of it is the number. It was the best way we could think of to graphically. I'm not a graphic designer by any means. You guys still awake? Is this boring? Do you want to go down a different topic? I can keep going. Is this good? You want more? You want more? Okay, here's another one. Also, thought, code signing, signed binaries. This is a different view. I tried playing with different ways of mapping it out. So those of you will notice that the worst are like Komodo and Thought and VeriSign. Well, that makes sense. Why? Because they're the biggest, right? So I'll just skip through this. How are we doing on time? Good? So I also started looking then at temporal. So I tried to apply all the principles of reverse engineering in a broader sense. So the guy who spoke before me, great job for him, by the way. It's really hard to teach basic malware analysis in an hour. It's not really possible. But one of the points to follow on what he was saying is when you guys are trying to rerun your malware in a sandbox environment, there's a lot of stuff now that is temporally based. You'll run it and it won't do something for like days or months. And unless you have the right sandbox in order to basically fake the clock, you're not going to see the activity anyway. So what I started doing here is I started looking at the abuse of certain certificates and CA authorities over time to see if there was a correlation. And guess what? In a lot of cases there were. So what I've learned, because of the fact that I have access to a huge data set, by the way, one of the real takeaways here, and I can't emphasize this enough, if you craft a rule for a particular heuristic based on, say, something Comment Crew does, and you have a very small data set you run against it, chances are you haven't caught something that will ping on that rule. If you have the largest data set in existence outside of certain federal caches, you're going to get hits on stuff that other people won't. So our group actually has an agreement with the industry, and you all as researchers. We tell people, if you send us a YARA rule, we'll run it against our data, and we will share with you the results of those hits. We get more YARA rules, you get research and hits from data sets that you otherwise would not have access to. We found that on particular days, only about 15%, and this is of the unknowns that we're pulling down, were what I would call advanced. In most of the rest of it's the low-hanging fruit. I'm not interested in that. That's not what I went into this field for. Some people are, and that's great. The guys that are going to protect mom and dad and grandma from the virus or whatever that's propagating, that's cool. And we need those people. And so I'm not belittling them. It's just not interesting to me. So you can see, well, you can read. I told you I wouldn't read you the slide. The other main point I would make about the people doing the reverse engineering from before is also the XOR code when you're doing reversing the malware. That's going to be a somewhat block for some of you at first. So buck up, little camper, and hang in there, you'll get it. Yeah, Komodo. Oh, by the way, this is not me saying, by the way, that VeriSign has owned. You guys know you can go to some sub-issuer for like 20 bucks and get a cert, right? So those of you doing security research or pen testing, it's really not that hard to go out and get a cert, abuse the crap out of it, and then burn it. And it's cheap. So if you're a criminal out there doing this stuff, you think they really give a crap if they burned a cert? No, just go get another one. So we're going to shift gears here for a minute. Like I told you, I'm all over the map. I'm very ADD. How many of you are familiar with ChipSec or have heard of it? Probably none of you, because it just dropped. This is a little story. I probably shouldn't say, plug your ears intelligently. There's a guy inside of Intel by the name of, I'll just call him Yuri, who's probably one of the most intelligent security researchers I've ever met, who has been developing I think the term that the marketing department forced him to call it was platforms validation framework. That's the marketing term for something because they don't want it to sound offensive. Please don't get me in trouble. I'm going to get some stroke first time. Basically, Yuri is one of the senior security researchers over at Intel. And he has been designing, and he hates when I call it this, it's basically the equivalent of a Metasploit framework for hardware. And it's called ChipSec. And he fought and fought and fought internally in Intel to get it released because he wanted to give it up open source. There is a version up on GitHub right now. Now, I'm not saying that this will happen. I'm saying it might happen that it might get pulled and forced to be taken down. So you might want to go get it while you still can, if you take my name. So what do you do with ChipSec? It's not what and obviously this is a neutered version of what the full version of ChipSec is. But it's designed to help people validate and test their own systems. So those of you that do pen testing and things like that, what this does is it opens up, and it's all written in Python, so you can look at it, you can change it, you can tweak it. What I really think is going to happen, I told Yuri this is going to happen. I said people are going to take ChipSec and they're going to evolve it into a fuzzer. And when that happens, some bad mojo is going to happen because within the bounds of ChipSec, you can do some very, very powerful things at the chip level to both flash memory, your processor, and other stuff. So go get it, look at it, play with it. If you're familiar with Metasploit, you'll feel kind of at home with it. It's just a bunch of Python scripts. Learn from it. Take a look at what he's done and try and surmise what's been taken out of this version. Does that make sense? You gotta care about this hacker community. And what's the end result? We get better stuff at the end, right? Right? That's the goal. And I can't say certain other things about it because I'll get in trouble. But anyway, enough of the soapbox on that. Yep. Everybody's happy?
Yeah.
Yep, you're all gonna go get ChipSec so we when it gets taken. If it gets taken down, you'll all have it already, right? So he dropped that at CanSec West, what was that, like 2-3 weeks ago? We were there. So, shifting gears again, soapbox time. Some things I'm tired of hearing people talk about. I go to a lot of security conferences. I talk to thousands and thousands of you guys. I talk 4 times at DEF CON every year. I've talked at conferences that are international. I've talked to hackers all over the world. And there are some pet peeves that I have. I don't have a problem with the students and the young people and the people that want to get a part of this community and be one of us. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is laziness and people that don't want to work anymore. They don't want to do anything. The tinkerers are dead. These kids want instant gratification. I mentioned the death of magic and wonder in the little bio that we wrote up. That's because everybody's a single Google search away of ruining every magic trick on the face of the planet now, right? So a lot of the work that I do in terms of the puzzles and contests and crypto that I do, I have to defeat Google. I have to find a way of making an intellectually stimulating puzzle that is solvable and not Googleable. That's a very hard problem space. Try it sometime, you'll see what I mean. So, some basics, really quickly. This is not meant to insult those of you who are professionals already. I assumed there would be more students here than there are, because I'm used to that at most of the cons that I go to. So I'm just going to rip through these really quickly. I have a list, first of all. Oh, sorry about that. How many of you feel like you're new to the scene? Be honest. A lot of you. Sorry about that. So, just basic stuff. Get it under your belt. This established, so in order to have a dialogue, you have to have a common vocabulary. To get that common vocabulary, there's some real fundamental stuff that you can get in a week or two with Google. please just be familiar with binary and how it works, because I'm really tired of having discussions with people when I'm talking about particular things, and I either make a joke in binary or make some reference, and they don't even get the fundamentals of how binary works. I know it's new to some people, but really, and so I have a background in mathematics, it really bugs me. If you can't do a 4-bit binary count up on paper, then just really learn to do it. Binary math, not as much, but still, especially if you can do this malware analysis stuff. Hex, this follows on the binary thing. I get really frustrated when people don't understand why we use hex. There's a reason we use hex. What's the reason we use hex, Skylar?
It's more concise than binary and smaller.
It makes sense for us because we're using a binary system. Why don't we use decimal?
Because
It doesn't, yeah, correct. It wastes space. I'll put it another way. It wastes space. You guys know, a lot of you know, how many of you guys know that? Yeah, okay. So those of you who don't, that's why. And I used to have this thing, I would go off on this tangent about why we use a base 10 number system, because we have 10 fingers and toes. So we all know that Bart Simpson counts in octal, right? Because he has 4. And it was at ShmooCon several years back. They have a crypto challenge that I compete in every year, and our team won the challenge. And after the challenge, we were just sitting around shooting the crap, and I just turned to Dragorn. You all know Dragorn. He's the author of Kismet. I don't know why this keeps running now. I went to Dragorn and I say, hey, Mike. His name is Mike. I go, Mike, what radix would a pirate count? Because the whole pirate ninja thing was still hot at the time. He goes, I don't know. And I go, base 6, 5 fingers in a hook. So, which, by the way, is called hexamal instead of hexadecimal, for those of you who are interested. So the pirate radix is base 6. And just learn these basic simple things so we can continue to have these dialogues. Things you should at least know about. Tor. I have this little soapbox about Tor. How many of you use Tor? Raise your hand. How many of you know what DNS leaking is? Raise your hand. How many of you use Tor and do not know what DNS leaking is? A couple of you are admitting it. It's okay. I'm not judging. I'm just trying to help elevate all of us. If you use Tor and you're not familiar with what DNS leaking is, Google it and fix it. I'm going to just leave it at that. Shodan. How many of you know what Shodan is? Go play with Shodan. They just did a thing. You can do queries against it for free. IDA Pro, for those of you who saw the reverse engineering thing, PCPIP, now I'm breaking my own law, reading the slides again. You can see the topics. Anything of interest on there for anybody? Anybody not recognize something on that list? Come on, admit it. Shout it out. Assembly. That's the way we used to abbreviate assembly back in the day. Now, I can have a philosophical discussion with you after this talk, because I have a number of students that would always come up to me and say, I'm going to code and I'm going to write crap for Windows. I'm going to go work for Blizzard. I'm going to make video games. Don't give a rat's ass about assembly. Don't want to learn it. Don't want to deal with it. It's a pain in the ass. I would argue, this is a personal challenge I offer to people. I will give you money. You'll win this bet or whatever. If you don't know assembly and you're a coder and you go learn some assembly, it will change the way you code. It will. It'll make you more efficient and it'll make you better. So anyway, that gauntlet's turned up. Any others on there before I go on?
How lame is Nessus?
So, soapbox about Nessus. I'm going to get so much trouble for these comments. There was a time when I was doing pen testing for the Department of Energy on some sites of interest. I mean physical locations of interest. And it was really disheartening to me when I learned that in a lot of places, their idea of validating the security of their systems is running Nessus against something and filling out a checklist. And for those of you who've never run Nessus, it'll even spit out an auto-done report for you. So you'd be like, there, here you go, give me my money, you know? It's not secure though, and that's why people get owned, because we have corporations and places that run nuclear facilities that are like, run an Nessus scan, and if it comes out at a certain level, you're golden. It's bullcrap. So I hate when industry is lazy like that. More things you should know about. I got 10 minutes left. Anything on this list you don't know about or would like to hear about? My soapbox opinion. No? We're all good?
Don't be an idiot on social networking site.
What about the why DNS works and why it's fundamentally broken?
It's broken because it doesn't use encryption.
That's a long discussion, actually, and we only have 10 minutes left. Just because it's a protocol that was made for, it didn't evolve correctly. That's the best way I can say that in under 10 minutes. Be a hacker. Don't listen to the stupid media definition. This is a HackerCon, like I said. I really want to help build up the hacker scene here in Phoenix because it's my home. I don't live here anymore. Phoenix, Arizona will always be home turf for me. We need to have a cool, kick-ass HackerCon. These guys doing CactusCon are busting ass to do this for you guys. This isn't a very big room. Most of the other major cities I go to, their cons are a lot larger than this. I know you're in your infancy now, but I will tell you the secret. Most cons, if they make it past their 3rd year, they survive. And this is year 3. So that means next year, it's going to be bigger and better, right? And you guys are from here, so build up the scene, get to know each other. Again, the have you tried it? I get really tired with don't ask questions, go out and do something, break some stuff. Hack all the things, you all know dual core, right? Yeah, I remember when that conversation came up, it was actually, for those of you who know CP. CP and dual core and I were hanging out, and CP basically said, just hack all the things, and they were all really drunk, and it turned into a song, and now hackers sing it all the time. I don't know why. So this is I'm going to close with this. This was the 4-bit microcontroller I did on the floor at DEF CON a couple of years ago. I thought it was a cool graphic to end on. I just say thanks. And then I just added some pictures of some of from the handiwork from years past. I guess if we have a few minutes, then I could just talk with you guys, because that's what I really like. Because I hate feeling like I'm lecturing. There's a lot of you out there, a lot of smart people. Teach me something. So that's what I got for you. Thank you. And I apologize if you just wanted to hear about like mystery challenge and stuff like that. I just kind of tired of talking about it. But I will talk about it. So we have what, 5 minutes? Who's my timekeeper? 7. Question.
Have you ever used SSD?
Have I ever used SSD? No, I have not.
All right, so the idea behind it is fuzzy hashing.
Okay.
Right now, I'm running a framework antivirus engine thing. But the way it works is I take artifacts from malware, and what I'm running into is a lot of the malware is the same shit over and over and over.
Correct.
And I have a certain threshold cutoff. And what I'm finding is my system works a lot better than a normal antivirus because it picks up all the same shit over and over again. It flags as bad off a certain threshold. I have a threshold cutoff of 75%, and it really works. So I was wondering if you ever worked with that.
No, what are you writing in it?
The file system driver is coded in C, and it communicates with a web server key.
I'd love to see it. I put an email address up there, and I'd love to talk about it if that's something you're open to discussing. I'd love to hear about it. Anyone else working on anything cool? Come on, you guys are like dead fish. Be lively. That's how you make a con survive. Have a good time. Life's too short to be. I'm from here, and I'm living on the East Coast, and this is people on the East Coast. Like they're always pissed. Like, be happy. Like, life's too short to be upset all the time. I know, we had snow there like 2 days ago. Yeah. I was at a Home Depot buying some wood, and there was a guy running through the aisles because it was so late in the air snowing. He goes, the end is nigh, make yourself right with God, because the end is nigh. And I was like, holy crap, what am I doing here? Yes?
Seriously though, how broken is the ass?
In my opinion, we need to start over. That's duct tape and spackle on a problem, in my opinion. And we do that with a lot of protocols because what happened to us? We evolved out of academic research and interconnecting machines that didn't have security model in place. And we've kind of evolved this stuff. And if you look at the specs and the way some of this stuff has evolved, it's just fundamentally flawed. It wasn't designed with badness in mind. So working with the Intel engineers, this is a perfect example. So some of the work that I'm doing is basically going to hopefully go into processors down the road, several years from now. In case you didn't figure it out, Renee James, the president of Intel, the reason she bought McAfee is because she wants to bring security thought into hardware design. Because let's talk about this for a minute. First, we were attacking the network level, then we were attacking at the application level. Now we're attacking where? We're attacking hypervisors, we're attacking BIOS, we're attacking lower and lower and lower and lower. Where's the last place to go? It's the hardware. Look at bad BIOS, for those of you who read about Dragos and the bad BIOS scare. That's some scary crap. What you think about the story, whether you think it's legit or not, is not the point. The point is those discussions are starting to happen. Not only that, but you've got hardware vendors now that are putting out these UEFI BIOSes and other things. That's an area of interest and research, especially with all the virtualization that's going on. Because hypervisor's target number one right now for a lot of stuff, right? Yeah, this is where it's all going. So there's that whole strange things are afoot at the Circle K slide was there for a reason. There's a lot of really creative and interesting things coming down the pike. And there's a lot of open places for research and exploitation. So hopefully, I'm trying to motivate you guys. How many of you know what TXT is? Only the Intel guy. That's a really good point. And the reason I bring this up, TXT is freaking cool from a security standpoint. Nobody knows about it and nobody implements it. That's another thing to go research about. TXT, go look it up. I'm not talking about the file extension, I'm not talking about a text document. Go look up TXT. I get to work with the guy who created it. It's freaking brilliant. And it's actually in your processor already. And people are like, I don't know. And the BIOS vendors, guess what? They're lazy. They're all about the Benjamins. They're all about cache. They're not implementing this type of stuff, these new technologies that are there to help make your systems more robust. Not in AMD, sorry. Skylar, you got a question?
How do you see secure boot and that with UEFI helping changing the way we do security?
That is a very awesome question that I am not allowed to answer because it's directly related to work that I'm doing right now as NDA. But that's an awesome, how many of you know what secure boot is? Skylar knows. I mean, you know that that's what Chromebook's using on all their stuff. Google's big on secure boot. I mean, you know what UEFI even is. How many of you understand the security implications of what you can do with some of the UEFI stuff that's out there? That should make you scared. It should make you wake up at night and be like, holy crap. If Dragos' attack was legit, we're all screwed. Oh, that's my doom and gloom time. No, that's why we're working on this stuff. It makes it interesting. 2 minutes left. What do you guys want to talk about? Yeah. Because I have a hardware background, and because of the security stuff that I've done, I will always believe in a hardware-based security solution to problems. Now, as far as what we're doing with virtualization, it's necessary, and it's going to be with us forever, whether I like it or not. It scares me, because code is always going to have flaws in it and always going to have weak points in it. It's just the way it is. So is hardware. But the hardware, the bar to deal with the hardware stuff, like for those of you who work with ITPs and stuff like that, or even know what that is, it's a different space. I hate to admit this, for a long time I feel like hardware has been more secure, hardware-based solutions, via security through obscurity. And I don't like to say that, because it hurts my heart as a hacker to say that, because we all know what happens with security through obscurity. It gets owned. It will, eventually. It's actually going to be a combination of the software and the hardware, which is kind of what Intel's hoping to do. You all know there are flags in the register for marking things as virtualized, and you've all seen this stuff. It's the marriage of the two things. In fact, when I was in school, I wanted to be the guy that sat between the hardware and the software people and made them talk to each other. The software people didn't understand the hardware people didn't get what the software people were doing. I wanted to fill that niche. And it's still a niche. And I still see problems right now with the engineering teams that I work with, where the hardware guys don't have a fucking clue what the software people are doing and vice versa. And that's a big problem. Take ChipSec that I talked about, go take a motherboard off the shelf, and run ChipSec against that BIOS, and you'll see what I mean. ChipSec was originally designed to test BIOSes that are being produced by these vendors who are too lazy to fix their problems, and it shows all kinds of security holes down at the BIOS level that are there, because these BIOS vendors are lazy as crap, and they're all about money. They don't want to develop anything else. They're like, oh, if you rewrite it for us, then yeah, okay, we'll do it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So we have a lot of problems, especially at the data center level. And for those of you doing virtualization stuff, it should make you nervous. So, time. Yeah. One last question real quick. No? Thank you. Oh, go.
What's the next DEF CON badge look like?
Tell us it's hardware. Tell us.
Okay, this doesn't leave this room, right? If I say this. So, really quickly, I made the promise to you guys at DEF CON last year that I was going to give out what the architecture was going to be ahead of time. The only reason I haven't so far is I've been yanked around by so many different groups trying to make this happen. I will tell you what I'm trying to do, and I have a con call on Monday to actually verify they can get me the chips. I am trying to put a fork processor on the DEF CON badge this year. It's a little foreshadowing information there. I'm also trying to do some cool stuff with wireless power transmission. There's a little height. Now, thank you. If you know how much work that is to do. I don't know that these things can happen. This happens every year. It's not my day job. I do this outside, like I told you, I build HackerCon, I help build HackerCons because I love the scene, I love you people, you're all my people. It's really a second day job, and you would be amazed what it's like trying to work with people when you're like, I need 15,000 chips for a HackerCon. Yeah. So anyway, there you go, there's your sneak peek of next year. Thank you.